Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar offered by the Center for Research and Intervention on Suicide, Ethical Issues, and End-of-Life Practice, commonly known as CRISE. I'm Lorraine Millette. I'm the coordinator for two mental health promotion programs that I'm just about to introduce to you. However, before I get started, I wanted you to know that you can send me your questions and comments on the chat bar that you find at the bottom of your screen. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll take a couple of minutes and I'll answer them for you. So again, welcome, and here I go. So the two mental health promotion programs that I'm going to present to you are Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills for Life. And my goal, basically, in this 50-minute presentation is to introduce to you the program's objectives and the theoretical foundation that they're framed on, the origins of both programs to give you a sense of where they come from. I will describe also the content of both programs, give you a little more details as to what we'll be discussing. My presentation will also provide an overview of evaluations that were conducted for both of the programs. And finally, I will talk about the various implementation options that are currently being used in the school milieu. So why work with mental health promotion mental health promotion? Well, for two reasons. The first one is that it allows us to work upstream, thereby decreasing the chances of a negative health outcome from occurring. Secondly, well, it's because it allows us to work on the protective factors, therefore enhancing children's attribute to deal more effectively with stressful events. And thirdly, and more importantly, it is less stigmatizing because it allows all children to participate in the programs, as well as the fact that we do not target a specific at-risk population. And to coin a phrase that the Public Health Agency of Canada uses on their website, and specifically on their mental health promotion tab, it's written in very bold letters, promoting mental health means promoting the best of ourselves. This is why Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills for Life has a common objective to promote mental health by increasing children's repertoire of useful coping strategies. So what are coping strategies? Well, basically, coping strategies are what we do to improve a situation or to make us feel better in a stressful or difficult situation. So to put this objective into a tangible example, if we take our little friend here, Jake, that's looking rather sad in this picture, it's because he just found out that one of his little friends, or rather his best friend, is moving away. So as you could see, he's rather very sad from this. So what are the things that Jake could do to help him feel better, or even if he's able to improve the situation? Well, if we rely on some of his little friends here, we can actually see that one of the strategies could be to open a Skype account, right, to put something in motion so that he's able to perhaps continue to chat with his little friend. It could also be to invite a new friend over to watch a movie with him. So that's going to help him feel a little better about what he's experiencing. He could play video games. He could also create a photo album of all the different activities that he's done with his friends over the years. He could play board games with his family. That also may soothe some of the sadness that he's experiencing. He could plan a trip, summer trip, so that he could go visit his friends. So that's something that he's putting in place also to help improve the situation. He could write a song about his friends. And lastly, he could spend some time with other friends that are going to make him feel better because his other little friend is gone. So basically, oh, and sorry, the last one, but not the least, he could read a book. For some children, that's also something that's very helpful for them because it allows them to go into that fantastic world that they enjoy through books sometimes. So essentially, coping strategies should improve the situation or help them feel better. And as we saw in Jake's example, he had a few strategies that helped him, either did both or one at the time. But more importantly, it has to be something that he does that doesn't harm him or someone else. So why coping strategies? Well, essentially, coping strategies are viewed as skills that are universally accepted as important. And one of the most influential approaches was developed by Richard Lazarus and Susan Folkman, who said that coping, and I quote, refer to changing cognition and behavioral efforts to manage specific demands that are appraised as taxing or exceeding the resources of the person. So using, as you see in front of you now, a module, what they call the transactional model, but this is really the somewhat simplified version because they're larger, or rather the transactional model is a little more exhaustive than this one, but I just wanted to make things simple to make it more comprehensive. And essentially, what it shows is that stress results from an imbalance between a demand and resources. So the demand being the stressful information or the stressful event, and the demand meaning the strategies and the tools that we have to deal with this particular situation. And essentially what they're saying is that when the stress exceeds our demand, or rather exceeds our resources, we are going to view this as particularly stressful. So it's literally the interpretation of the situation that's important, way more important actually, than the actual event itself. So in other words, if someone feels that they have the tools to deal with a particular stressful situation, they may not appraise it as something that they cannot overcome. And that could be something related to health symptoms, for instance. Well, they know that they could go see the doctor and they'll be able to get that resolved. So that's a strategy that they'll put in place. It could be also dealing with a particular problem, such as Jake, who his little friend was moving away. Well, he couldn't change the situation, but he could certainly put some strategies in place to help him feel better, to adapt to this new situation. Or again, his emotional reaction to that situation, the sadness, he has put some strategies in place for that to help him feel better, to come back to feeling some kind of well-being. Now, what that means is that if Jake, for instance, using that same example, comes across another situation where a friend moves away, well, he may have a little more tools to deal with that situation and not be so destabilized by the event that has occurred. So this is the reason why that the coping strategies are an important factor in someone's life, or tools in someone's life, to overcome some of these difficult and stressful situations that at any age we experience. In addition to this framework that I'm just explaining to you about coping strategies, there are also useful guidelines for delivering the program in the classroom, and I'm going to be reading a few of them with you. The main guidelines are both programs are to be delivered in their entirety. The reason for this instruction is that both programs were developed in progressive levels. Therefore, picking and choosing different sessions may not provide the effects that you would like with the children. In other words, in addition to this framework that I'm just explaining to you about coping strategies, there are also useful guidelines for delivering the program in the classroom, and I'm going to be reading a few of them with you. The main guidelines are both programs are to be delivered in their entirety. The reason for this instruction is that both programs were developed in progressive levels. Therefore, picking and choosing different sessions may not provide the effects that you would like with the children. In other words, because it was developed in this successive type of sessions, not recommended because it may not attain the intended results. Also, positive skills are reinforced. So what we mean by that is teacher and schools professionals are encouraged to help children discuss the type of strategies that they would like to use. However, not to filter them, is to actually validate the coping strategies that are going to propose, even if they may not be the most efficient. And it brings us to the third point, is even though they may not have coping strategies that are the most efficient, we know that there's no right or wrong strategy, because we will help children through the guiding rules, or the golden rules, to determine themselves whether it meets the golden rules, such as not harming someone or themselves. The next guidelines are focused on solution and not the person. And what we're referring to here is that sometimes you will have some children who are going to come up with some solutions, but who have been perhaps previously very disruptive in the classroom. So sometimes we could get a little challenged by that. So therefore, it's to focus on the solution and not the child that is proposing it. Also, children need repetition. One of the comments that we get from time to time, especially with Zippy's friends, is that we come back to the story quite often, especially when we want to introduce another theme. So some teachers have said that it becomes a little redundant, always reading the same story. However, we know for a fact that children like the stories, and repetition is important to them because it gives them a sense of security, and it also allows them to know what's going to happen next, especially if we're going to be introducing another session with a different theme. Children will be practicing their skills in different settings. What we're referring to here is that all the activities in both programs, for that matter, are not always viewed in the school setting. Children do get a chance to practice some of these coping skills related to things that could happen at home or in the park or even at some friend's house. Children will learn from one another. Because not all children have the same coping skill or the same coping strategy, it will allow them to hear that what some friends would do or how they would find a solution for this particular problem could be very different from them. And they could remember that, oh, geez, that's something new for me, and perhaps even use it in the future. Children help each other rather than compete. There is no competition in this program. It's not about Johnny who has 4 strategies and Jill who only has 2. It's about all together they have 6 strategies. So it's about everybody increasing their baggage of strategies. And lastly, children evaluate their own success. As I was mentioning to you a little earlier on, when we're helping children to recognize what is a coping strategies that meet the 2 guiding principles, it's important that the children evaluate and not the facilitator, either the teacher or the professional that actually does the judging as to whether this strategy should be used or not. Now for the content of the program. I'm going to be talking about first Zippy's Friends. So Zippy's Friends was originally developed in the UK and revised and modified here at the CRISE. The NGO responsible for disseminating the program around the world is called Partnership for Children. They also have a website that I welcome you to go visit. They have all sorts of additional information for you. However, know that the CRISE has the license to deploy this program across Canada. So if you have any inquiries as to perhaps what the cost is for Zippy's Friends, please do not hesitate to contact me either by mail, rather by email, or by phone. So this slide that you see in front of you essentially is to show you that Zippy's Friends is being deployed across not just in North America, but across the world. There is actually 30 countries and over 1.3 million children who are participating in the program. And the program is being delivered across the world in the way it's being prescribed with very minor modifications. And that's only in a couple of countries countries, I believe, such as India, that had to make some small tweaking changes because some of the sessions, or rather some of the characters in the program are not necessarily something that resonates with that school milieu. But again, very few changes have been done to the program. So what is Zippy? Well, essentially, it's a program that that is a program that was developed for children between the age of 6 and 7. So essentially first grade. I know in Europe, they tend to start a little younger. They actually start in kindergarten. It's 24 sessions. That is approximately 45 minutes. So something around the lines of 1 per week. It's 6 illustrated stories about Zippy and his friends. And the stories are very closely related to what the children experience in the class or in the school, or again in their environment. So it's not something that does not resonate with them. They will be able to recognize themselves in the story. And the activities, well, there's group discussions, there's drawing, and there's also role playing. So they will get a chance to practice some of these new concepts that they're learning through Zippy. So Zippy is a stick insect. It's actually a stick insect that belongs to one of the main characters of the story, which is Tig. And here are the little characters, the friends that the children will get to know throughout all 6 modules. As you could see here, Zippy is kind of on Tig's arm. So that's kind of his little pet that you will come across throughout the story. But I can assure you that everything that is occurring in the stories is all around the 6 children, or 6 or 7 children, as opposed to just the stick insect. So now for the content. Well, as I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, the program was developed in progressive levels. So we're starting with feelings. And in this module, it's to help improve children's ability to recognize different emotions and identify strategies to cope with them. So we're going to start with feeling sad and happy. What does that mean? And how can they feel that? And why do they feel that? And more importantly, when they're feeling sad, what are the coping strategies that they could use to make themselves feel better, say if they're sad at school or at home or even with a friend? In session 2, we're going to talk about anger and being annoyed. And we normalize those emotions because it's okay to feel angry and it's okay to feel annoyed. It's what we do about it and what are some of the strategies we could put in place when we're experiencing those feelings. We're also in session 3 going to talk about jealousy. In the story, there's Layla who's jealous because her brother is getting a lot of attention from their mom because he was sick a particular summer. So we're going to talk about jealousy and what that means, and that it's normal and it's okay to feel jealous. It's what we could do about it. What can we put in place to make ourselves feel better when we're experiencing jealousy? And finally, in session 4, we're going to talk about nervousness. And what's interesting here is we're going to help children recognize what nervousness feels in the body and where do we feel it. And that's something that really is quite helpful for them because at that very young age, they are experiencing something manifests itself in their body, but they're not always sure what it is. So this will give them a chance to find out what it is, where it happens, and what are the strategies they could put in place. Module 2, well, here we're going to talk about communication. So we've learned all about what emotions are about, and this session, this module is going to help children improve their ability to communicate their feelings. So now we know what it is we're experiencing. Well, how is it that we could express this to others? So session 1 is to improve the communication, and in session 2, which is particular, is that we're going to take some time for children to understand that listening is also a component of communication. It's one of the most important components because if we don't listen properly, we won't really get to understand what the other person is telling us. They will learn in session 3, well, who can help us? In addition to knowing that adults are there to help them, they will also get a chance to recognize that, oh, geez, sometimes our friends are also there. They could listen and they could be helpful. And finally, in session 4, we're going to be helping children to be able to express more specifically what it is that they really want to say when they're experiencing something. So this is a poster that will help and remind children what they learned in session 4, and to remember some of the tools that they've learned, such as thinking before you speak, don't shout, speak clearly, all those elements that will make communicating with others a lot clearer. So that goes for module 2. In module 3, well, now this one is to help children improve their abilities to make friends and to cope with rejection and loneliness. As we know, even at that very young age, children in grade 1 or 2 or even kindergarten do experience rejection. I mean, it's not uncommon to hear that in a school activity that's supposed to take place, 2 best friends are supposed to do it together, and then one of them decides to do it with someone else. Well, this is a little bit what happens in the story where Sandy is crying because Layla has decided to do the activity with Jill as opposed to her best friend. So this is something that she's feeling very sad about. So in session 1, we're going to help children recognize what are the things we could do to keep a friend. And there's an activity, I'll show you some pictures in a few seconds of what they do. They actually use some kind of marionette to talk about what it is I can do to keep a friend. Also, they will talk about dealing with loneliness and rejection. It is something that does happen with children at that young age. And so therefore, there's a place for them to talk about it and then to realize that there are things that they can do to try and help them feel a little less lonely and to deal with rejection. And session 3 was how to resolve conflicts with friends, right? So Sandy is kind of upset because Layla didn't want to play with her during that outing, and they're not really talking to each other anymore, and they're rather angry. Well, it's all about what can you do when you're feeling those feelings, when you're angry and annoyed with your friend? How can you resolve that conflict? They will get a chance to be able to do activities around that concept. And finally, how to make friends. So it's really to help children that when you are experiencing loneliness and rejection, or you're actually in a new environment and you don't have any friends, well, what are the things that you can do to find yourself new friends? So as I was saying to you a few seconds ago, here are these are some of the activities, rather the posters that children had created in their class of their friends and how they had to talk about their friends in the activity. And then finally, we don't see it very well in this picture, but when we're talking about conflict resolution, we'll actually have children create the flower reconciliation. And in the petals, they will actually write some of these strategies that they will use to help themselves with conflicts, how to make friends, and how to keep a friend. And that's going to be written in the petals, and the teacher is able to reuse and reinforce this concept throughout the year with the children. Now when we get into module 4, that one actually we are a little more directive. And what I mean by that is because we're going to be talking about bullying with children. And the main thing in this module is to explain to children that bullying is unacceptable and what are the things we could do when that happens. So first in session 1 is that we're going to recognize what a good solution is. In session 2, then we're going to go a little more in depth of what bullying is, and we're going to help children understand the distinction between bullying and conflict and what are the steps we can do when we're being bullied or when we observe bullying. Then we're going to talk about solving problems. We're going to go a little more specifically into what it is solving a problem and how we could go about it. And also when we get to session 4, then we're actually going to help children recognize how they can be a source of help for their friends as well as an adult, or how they could bring their friend who's experiencing such as bullying or any other important conflict to go see an adult to be able to improve the situation. So essentially, session 4, we're talking about bullying. And I know that a lot of teachers, because they already have protocols in place in the school, it gives them also a chance to talk about what children can do when they observe, when they see bullying, because the school has specific rules about that. So it gives the teachers a chance to talk about that. And here is some posters that teachers in many cases will obviously use for that particular module, but sometimes actually keep it in the classroom throughout the year. Module 5 is really the module that distinguishes us from most programs that exist right now. It's the one that we will talk about changes and loss. We will talk about death with children. First, in session 1, we are going to talk about loss and what it means and some changes such as a divorce or a move. We'll put some onus on that. But in session 2, we actually talk about death. And how we do this, and I'm going to be giving away the punchline now, is that Zippy in the program actually dies. Now, rest assured that stink insects don't last very long. Unfortunately, I understand that they have about a 6-month, they live for about 6 months approximately. So it's kind of an appropriate little insect to use to explain or certainly open the door to talk about death with children. And know that there is training that is obviously offered to teachers or school professionals throughout the program. So we will help teachers and they will have the tools necessary to deal with some of the questions that children may ask while they're running the program in their classroom. In session 3, we talk about visiting the graveyard. Essentially, visiting the graveyard is to demystify what is the graveyard, for one, that it's not all about boogeymans and zombies, but more about a particular ritual that is used in some cultures to soothe some of the sadness that some people may experience when they've lost a loved one. And then finally, session 4 is to learn about some of the changes in loss, especially in some of the changes. What does it mean and what can come out of a change? So basically in module 5, it's to improve children's ability to cope with changes in loss. So they will learn that all emotions are good and we can experience many of them, and what are the strategies we could put in place to deal with changes and loss. And finally, module 6, well, basically it's a wrap-up of everything that the children have learned since the beginning. It's really to improve children's ability to use a variety of coping strategies in different situations. So they're going to learn about the different coping. We're going to be more specific in helping children recognize that there's copings that are more for when we're feeling sad and we can't change the situation, so what can we do? And then the ones that we can change the situation. So we make it a little more clear for children to understand both types of coping strategies. Also, how we could help others to emphasize that we can be a source for our friends and activities that are surrounding that. To adapting to new situations. In the story, the children at this point are going to be going up to grade 2, and they meet this new little boy who's new to the neighborhood and who's going to be going in grade 1. And so the children exchange on what they've learned and all about this teacher that this young boy is going to be in his classroom. And then finally in session 4, it's about celebrating our accomplishments of all these different coping strategies that we've learned throughout the program. Here is one of the little, I wanted to show you a small booklet that the children can have, the school could buy for the kids. It's called My Zippy Book, and essentially it's just to keep a trace of all the different activities as well as all the different coping skills, or rather strategies that the children learn throughout the year. And this is an area to show you where they're able to write down or to draw, actually it would be more like drawing, what made them feel happy or sad. So just a quick overview about Zippy's evaluation. Well, essentially evaluations that were, research rather, that were done in the UK, Hong Kong, Ireland, Norway, and Quebec, and a few others, that's just to name a few, have found these general significant effects with coping, with positive coping strategies. So there was an increase in coping strategies, and I'm just naming a few here, but saying I'm sorry and telling the truth. They've also found that there was an increase in emotional literacy. Children literally had more words. They were able to express what they were experiencing. Class climate was improved. There was less negative strategies such as, screaming or fighting. Bullying was down because there was a better comprehension, and also school performance was increased. So therefore, children had a little more social ability, so they were focusing a little more on school and a little less on maybe little Johnny that's being disruptive in the classroom. So that's just to give you some general findings of the program. However, I have listed a few of the articles, research articles that have been published. However, if you need more information on these or others, please don't hesitate to contact me. Moving on now to Passport Skills for Life. Well, Passport Skills for Life originally stems from a request by teachers who were running Zippy's Friends in their schools, and they suggested it would be really helpful that there could be a program for older children that would consolidate and continue to reinforce some of the concepts that some of these children have learned with Zippy's Friends session. So essentially, we submitted a proposal to the Innovative Strategy Challenge that requested that we developed a program on mental health promotion for GRACE children, that it can be used in different and diverse settings and diverse environments, and that it would be specifically evaluated. So we won with 15 other participants across Canada, and we were awarded $2.5 million to develop this program. About to present to you is the fruit of a 5-year effort from teachers, school professionals, children, parents, and researchers. Passport Skills for Life is a program that is delivered in primary school. Basically, it is aimed for children between ages 8 to 11, grade 4 and grade 5. It is a universal program, the same thing as Zippy's Friends. All children can participate. It is delivered in the classroom by trained teachers. It's 17 sessions. There's a little less sessions than Zippy's Friends. However, it is of 55-minute duration. It's, again, fun and interactive activities that include also a giant board game, and introduce the themes. Because these children are a little older and they're able to read, obviously, while we figured that it would be kind of cool for them to be introduced to themes through comic strips in a fantastic world setting. And that allows the teacher to have discussions starting from the actual comics. However, all the activities are always related to children's experiences and life experiences. There's also parent involvement, and there's some activities that are provided to bring home, and also information sheets that I will be mentioning to you in a few minutes. So the program content, well, very much like Zippy's Friends, we use progressive levels. So we start with the intro. And the intro basically is just to begin the adventure with the children and to stimulate the children's interest. So we actually introduce the meeting. And essentially here, what we're doing is that we're having children meet the main characters and realize that all this is happening through a forest. So children walk through this forest and they meet this dragon that is actually taking some flowers. And because one of them breaks a branch, the poor dragon gets scared, burns his flower, and then he flies away. And then the children follow him because they're rather curious as to why there's this dragon in this forest. And they notice that the dragon goes behind a waterfall. So they follow behind the waterfall, and whoosh, then the children are found somewhere, we don't know where. And this is how it ends, on a cliffhanger. And that really is to stimulate children's participation for the following week, when then they will be introduced the program in its full details. So the general goal for this module 1 is for children to have, or to the children to develop the ability to identify, name, and communicate what are their feelings in different situations, and to recognize that emotions that other people may be feeling. So before we start talking about feelings, however, we're going to help children recognize what makes them different. What are the things that are similar that they have with some of their school friends, as well as some of the things that are different. To recognize that differences is something that is strong. It's a strong thing to have in a classroom, because our differences can make the team strong as well as our similarities. In session 2 here, we're going to be talking about a little more about our emotions and what are the different types of emotions that we could experience faced with a particular situation, and that sometimes we could actually feel more than one emotion. And then when we get to session 3, well, then it's all about how we could feel, again, different emotions, but it's not always so obvious. So the other person may be experiencing more emotions, so we need to ask, because we can't always notice in their behavior or even in their face whether that's what they're experiencing or not. These are some of the characters with the emotions that the children are going to be getting to know, and that's some of the posters that the teacher will actually put on the wall. In Module 2, well, here we're going to help children identify how to make friends and to increase their coping skills for dealing with problems that occur in a relationship. So a little bit like Zippy, you can see that the trend is very similar. Here is all about understanding how to make friends. But before we get to how to make friends or how to keep friends, we're going to be very explicit as to what coping skills or coping strategies are all about. And we will introduce to the children the golden rules. And I'll show you the poster in a few seconds. So they're going to get a really good understanding as to how to evaluate if the strategy we're using meets the 2 golden rules. And in session 2, well, then friendship, again, very similar to Zippy, it's how can you keep friends? How can you make friends? And they were going to use a friendship tree, which they will identify different strategies and actually post this on the friendship tree. And then in session 2, well, it's some of the highs and lows of friendship and what are the things we can do when we're experiencing some of these lows, strategies that we could put in place. So here are the 2 golden rules, and this is a very large poster that the teacher keeps in the classroom. And again, same as Zippy, is to improve the situation or help me feel better or both, and more importantly, doesn't hurt anybody, and that includes ourselves. The friendship tree, this is a very large poster again that the teacher keeps in the classroom, and I could say that from some of the observations I've done just recently in some classes, a lot of the teachers keep it there and they use it throughout the year. In Module 3, well, here we're going to be talking about more specifically difficult situations, right? So frustration. How do I deal with frustration? It's inevitable that children are going to experience frustration, and we're not telling them that they shouldn't, but what the program is, or rather this session is going to talk about, is more about, okay, so you're feeling frustrated, what can you do when you're feeling frustrated? What are the strategies you could put in place? And then when we get into session 2, then we're going to talk a little bit like we did with Zippy's friends, rather than call it nervousness, it's going to be more like dealing with stress. What are the things we could do with dealing with stress, and what are the strategies we could put? As well, as in Zippy's friends, we're using a silhouette. We do the same thing here with the children who are a little older. But this time around, it's not only about how it manifests itself, the nervousness or the stress, but it's going to be more about what are also the physical, the behavioral things that we do that show that we're stressed, such as biting our nails. So these are the elements that they'll be able to talk about in the classroom. Again, always looking for strategies to deal with those different stressful events. And finally, dealing with conflict again. What are the strategies that we could put into place when we're dealing with conflict? And then there's a large board game that's being introduced for the children in that particular module that allows them to collectively find many coping skills, many coping strategies that meet the 2 criteria. And when they do, then they get a chance to go up on this large game board. And again, as I was saying to you earlier, there is no competition. So there is one game piece for the whole classroom, and therefore everyone wins. And there's no such thing as one who has more than the other. The health thermometer is also introduced in this module, and again, it's just to explicitly help children recognize and observe what help means. In other words, when someone asks for help, and when someone is asked for help, and when someone is providing help. So this is to help children and teachers notice when this is happening, and then when they do notice it, it allows them to go up on the help thermometer, and when they get to a darker or a black bar, then it also helps them, or rather it provides them a chance to go up on the large board game that I just showed you a few seconds ago. When we get to Module 4, well, there we're going to be talking about what refers to fairness, justice, and what is right, and we will talk about bullying again here. Now, even though children are a little older and they do understand the definitions of bullying, however, they're not always very clear on what that looks like, the situation that looks like bullying. So we actually help them here get a better perspective of what bullying is all about. But before we get into bullying, we're actually going to validate with them what it is that they find is unfair in their environment, such as perhaps going to bed earlier than their big brother. And so we actually give them a place, a chance to talk about this. And so they will be actually creating their own situation cards, and then collectively together finding solutions for what they feel is unfair in their environment. The teacher will have an opportunity to explain to them the differences between what is inequality and what is unfair, and so on and so forth. However, we really want them to feel that they're being validated in what they feel is unfair, and to find strategies to deal with that situation, since it's not something that can be changed. And finally, in session 3, we're going to be talking about dealing with unfair and unjust situations in the world. So because children are exposed with social media about everything that's happening in the world, they actually get a chance to discuss it with the teacher as to what they find is unfair, and perhaps even propose some strategies that they feel perhaps could change or at least better that situation. Module 5, just like in Zippy's Friends, is the one that we're going to talk about death with the children. We're going to talk about changes in the first session, and that's going to be about what are the things that can be looked upon as positive and perhaps not so positive about changes. Not so much about, we don't talk about changes with death, but certainly about with moving, or with a friend, if a friend moves, for instance. What can be positive about that? And in the comic, it is brought about how Milo is experiencing this change. His family is going to be moving into a larger house. He's not really happy about that because he's going to be further away from this enchanted forest and a little further away from his friend Olya. So it's all about, okay, what it is that he's experiencing, why he finds it difficult, and what are maybe some of the positiveness from this. And the children will get a chance to also afterwards find some of the strategies to deal with this particular change. When we come across session 2 and we're talking about dealing with loss, then it's to help children understand how loss is destabilizing, what it means, but also all the emotions that can occur. For instance, even not feeling anything is an emotion that can happen, and it's okay to feel that. It's okay to feel angry. It's also okay to feel guilty, perhaps, about something that they feel they should have done that they didn't do, and the person that they unfortunately feel that they were supposed to do something with has passed away in the interim. So this is to help children recognize that all those emotions happen, and it's okay, and it's normal, but then what can we do to make ourselves feel better? And then finally, in session 3, it's to help each other in difficult situations. So in other words, it's children who are going to propose to someone who's experiencing a loss the type of strategies that they would use for them to make themselves feel better. In the final session, well, again, a little bit like Zippy's Friends, it's a review of everything that the children have learned since the beginning. So they will have a chance to do activities again that relate to all the different coping strategies that they've used up to now. And then finally, they have the final party session, essentially, is to celebrate, again, as we do with Zippy, all their accomplishments. And they also get a certificate for all their accomplishments. Here is one of the posters that the teacher will be using when she'll be talking about changes in loss and how it destabilizes, and how before it happens, how we're kind of all in balance, and when that happens, we lose our balance. So it's an activity that the teacher will be doing with the children, and then how we regain balance, but we're a little different because we've acquired a new experience. And I was mentioning to you before about how there is some activities that children could bring home. Well, it's somewhat to bridge that gap between school and home. So there are definitely information sheets that are provided for the parents on each and every one of the modules. There's also home activities. Now, home activities are obviously optional because I understand that parents are very busy, but I know a lot of the teachers do give it to the children, and some of them have a chance to do these fun activities with the parents. There's a workshop also that's available, and again, it's very optional, so it's up to the school. If they want it, we could certainly give the training for that. So, however, it is quite encouraged, especially the information sheet and the home activities. A lot of the parents, the ones that did participate in the evaluation, did enjoy them. So now I'm going to move along very quickly into the evaluation. I'm going to give you just a very, very broad overview, but essentially we wanted to know, does the program work? Is it implemented successfully? And does it work with children? Do they actually increase their coping strategies? So the next slide is to explain what type of evaluation design was used. And to also, what was important in our design is that we wanted to make sure that the socioeconomic levels were evenly distributed in both groups, experimental group as well as the control group. These are some of the schools that participated, or the school boards that participated in the program. And I guess I'd like your attention to be drawn on the amount of children that actually were involved in this evaluation. So for the intervention group, we had 872 children, and the control group, we ended up having 826 children. So the information that I'm providing you on the evaluation, well, there was a great deal of people that participated in this. So we feel very confident in the results that we observed. So now the next slide will provide a brief overview of the evaluation results. So essentially here, the first slide, it really just explains to you the implementation. So in general, teachers liked running the program. They found that it was turnkey, it was easy to run in the classroom. They found it was very attractive because of the posters and the colors. The children, they liked it, and the children enjoyed it, and that there was a variety of relevant topics that they felt that it was super important to talk to with children. The children themselves, they found that the program was kind of neat because it discussed things about death, which I thought was kind of a nice place for them to be able to ask the questions and have them answered. Learning new ways to cope, especially with frustration and conflict. That was something that emerged quite a bit from the children while we were having the focus group discussions. Being able to express their feelings without judgment. That was another thing that they found was very, very helpful. And again, as I said a few seconds ago, the teachers, the material, they really liked the comics, and they also enjoyed the colorful board game as everything else that came with the program. The parents' appreciation, well, the parents that did participate in the activities, they liked the fact that they learned a little more about their children's options and some of the strategies that they would put into place. It increased some kind of complicity between parent and child also that they enjoyed, and that they found that the activities were quite amusing. And more importantly also, and I forgot to mention that earlier, the activities are only about 15 minutes, so it doesn't take a lot of time, and it can be certainly done over or around the dinner table. So it's rather easy and very short. So now I'm going to talk about some of the effects of the children. So evaluation was done using standardized questionnaires, and the following is an overview of the effects of the program. So basically, the teachers perceive the program They perceived changes in children. They found that they used more skills. Children got to know each other a little better also. The vocabulary, as I was mentioning a little earlier, also in reference to emotions. There was a great deal more empathy also that teachers had recognized and observed during the delivery of the program in their classrooms. The children, well, they found that themselves, some of the strategies that they discovered was that they were able to step back and calm themselves down, making compromise, which was not a word that they used very often beforehand, but it was something that they felt more comfortable afterwards, that they feel more comfortable also about asking for help. And say really how you feel. That was also a strategy that children felt very strongly about. And what was interesting here when we ask about how teachers felt that they changed, in previous evaluations with Zippy, a lot of the teachers would spontaneously write on these questionnaires how because they were delivering this program in the classroom, had some kind of effect on them. And so we were very curious about this, and we wanted to see and investigate a little more closely as to how this occurred, or if it did occur. So basically, we asked in the focus group what they found this program had done to them, or at least how they felt this program had brought about a change. And some of the answers were, well, they felt they were better equipped to deal with conflict amongst children, and that was because of a lot of the tools that the program provides them, such as I was mentioning before, the friendship tree and specifically the guiding principles. They developed a more intimate relationship with children, and they actually use the criteria themselves, the two golden principles or the two golden rules in their own personal lives, which we thought was quite interesting. Also, we've asked teachers while they were delivering the program to answer this standardized questionnaire called the Ways of Coping. And we observed between the two groups, teachers who were delivering it and the teachers that weren't, that there was a significant difference between them, in the sense that teachers who were facilitating the program end up having more coping skills in the post-test than the control group. So we thought that that was quite interesting, because what it means essentially, and one of the teachers had explained it to us not too long ago, is that it just made them more aware of the fact that they do have coping skills, and to take that pause and to think about how they could put this coping strategy in place by keeping in mind the guiding principles. So as an overview of the results for Passport, the teachers and the children and the parents enjoyed the program. It was easy to implement in the classroom. We've noticed in our results that it's best suited for grade 4 and grade 5 children, because we found in grade 3 there were some of the concepts that were a little more difficult and more challenging for children to understand, and with grade 6 it was more like they found it maybe a little too babyish. So the overall program sat better with the grade 4 and grade 5. That it did increase coping skills with children. Their recognition of emotion was something also that was significant, and it also increased the children's classroom performance. Teachers reported that the program facilitated their management of the class and increased their own coping skills. So that, in a nutshell, is what we found in our overall results. And now just a quick view on implementation. I just briefly wanted to talk about some of the models that can be delivered in the classrooms. And this is what we're seeing right now. So essentially, some of the school boards have an in-house trainer who trains either teachers, or in some case, their school professionals to facilitate the program in the classrooms with children. In some cases, Zippy's Friends is being delivered over a 2-year period with the same cohort. Now, we know that still has a significant effect with children because it was evaluated in Ireland a few years back using that model, and children did increase their coping skills as well as emotional literacy and so on, as what I was explaining to you a little earlier on. Teachers are running the program in the classroom. Some classes it's teachers, some other schools it's actually either youth counselors. We have also technical behavioral counselors that are also implementing the program. So it depends on the school, the milieu, who they want to have in the classroom to deliver the program. And we actually have in some instances where it's the nonprofit organization that are disseminating the program, that are training teachers in their community. And in some cases, the actual program is provided for free. It is lent to the teachers, and therefore the nonprofit organization at the end of the year just takes them back, but they're able to follow up, and the following year these teachers can certainly implement the program if they wish. So that, in essence, is some of the models that are out there, but keep in mind that there's a great deal of flexibility that if you're interested in this program, just let me know and we can discuss some of these framework that may be more suited for your environment. So essentially, the take-home message I would like to leave you with is, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. So I understand now I have a couple of questions that were sent to me while I was giving this presentation. One of them was actually, does a school need to implement both programs? Well, actually, no. Both programs are standalone. I have some schools that actually have decided to pilot with Zippy first, and then after that, see and feel and experience the program and to observe if there's some changes, and therefore, a couple of years later on, have implemented Passport. I have some schools that just went ahead and decided to actually implement Passport first, and they are going to be implementing Zippy. One particular school district in the Niagara region is going to be implementing Zippy officially in September. So there's a few models that are out there, as I was explaining to you a few seconds ago. So therefore, no, there's no need to implement both of them at the same time. They both are standalone and provide very interesting results or impacts with the children. I have another question here. It says, is there training? Well, I kind of just said it very quickly before, but yes, there is training for both programs. We will train teachers before they implement the program, and then we will also have a half-day training with them in the middle part. Essentially, a little before they get into module 4 and 5, we like to visit the teachers again, see how things went. Did they have any obstacles? How can we help them? And more importantly, give them necessary tools so when they're going to be dealing with module 5, which seems to be the one that they apprehend the most, we'll give them the necessary tools to deal with it. Another question that's interesting, and this is one that I hear quite often, do parents feel uncomfortable about the fact that teachers talk about death in the classroom? From my experience, and certainly by the comments I've received by most of my teachers, no. Parents are not uncomfortable about that subject. If anything, a lot of them are very relieved by the mere fact that it's discussed in the classroom and in a setting that children may not be experiencing at that moment any kind of loss. So no, parents are very open to it. And more importantly, because of the fact that there are these information sheets that are provided to the parents, as well as for Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills Passport Skills for Life, parents are aware ahead of time. So they're not surprised by the fact that their children will be talking about these sensitive issues. So in essence, those are the types of questions I got. If you have any other ones, I'm sorry, please feel free to write to me or to call me. I will be more than happy to give you additional information. And I also have a couple of samples that I could provide you that you could share with your colleagues. Well, thanks again for being present at this introduction of Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills for Life. And I hope to hear from you soon. Bye for now. So as an overview of the results for Passport, the teachers and the children and the parents enjoyed the program. It was easy to implement in the classroom. We've noticed in our results that it's best suited for grade 4 and grade 5 children, because we found in grade 3 there were some of the concepts that were a little more difficult and more challenging for children to understand, and with grade 6 it was more like they found it maybe a little too babyish. So the overall program sat better with the grade 4 and grade 5. That it did increase coping skills with children. Their recognition of emotion was something also that was significant, and it also increased the children's classroom performance. Teachers reported that the program facilitated their management of the class and increased their own coping skills. So that, in a nutshell, is what we found in our overall results. And now just a quick view on implementation. I just briefly wanted to talk about some of the models that can be delivered in the classrooms. And this is what we're seeing right now. So essentially, some of the school boards have an in-house trainer who trains either teachers or in some case their school professionals to facilitate the program in the classrooms with children. In some cases, Zippy's Friends is being delivered over a 2-year period with the same cohort. Now we know that still has a significant effect with children because it was evaluated in Ireland a few years back using that model, and children did increase their coping skills as well as emotional literacy and so on, as what I was explaining to you a little earlier on. Teachers are running the program in the classroom. Some classes it's teachers, some other schools it's actually either youth counselors. We have also technical behavioral counselors that are also implementing the program. So it depends on the school, the milieu, who they want to have in the classroom to deliver the program. And we actually have in some instances where it's the nonprofit organization that are disseminating the program, that are training teachers in their community. And in some cases, the actual program is provided for free. It is lent to the teachers, and therefore the nonprofit organization at the end of the year just takes them back, but they're able to follow up, and the following year these teachers can certainly implement the program if they wish. So that, in essence, is some of the models that are out there, but keep in mind that there's a great deal of flexibility that if you're interested in this program, just let me know and we can discuss some of these framework that may be more suited for your environment. So essentially, the take-home message I would like to leave you with is, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. So I understand now I have a couple of questions that were sent to me while I was giving this presentation. One of them was actually, does a school need to implement both programs? Well, actually, no. Both programs are standalone. I have some schools that actually have decided to pilot with Zippy first, and then after that, see and feel and experience the program and to observe if there's some changes, and therefore, a couple of years later on, have implemented Passport. I have some schools that just went ahead and decided to actually implement Passport first, and they are going to be implementing Zippy. One particular school district in the Niagara region is going to be implementing Zippy officially in September. So there's a few models that are out there, as I was explaining to you a few seconds ago. So therefore, no, there's no need to implement both of them at the same time. They both are standalone and provide very interesting results or impacts with the children. I have another question here. It says, is there training? Well, I kind of just said it very quickly before, but yes, there is training for both programs. We will train teachers before they implement the program, and then we will also have a half-day training with them through in the middle part. Essentially, a little before they get into module 4 and 5, we like to visit the teachers again, see how things went. Did they have any obstacles? How can we help them? And more importantly, give them necessary tools so when they're going to be dealing with module 5, which seems to be the one that they apprehend the most, we'll give them the necessary tools to deal with it. Another question that's interesting, and this is one that I hear quite often, do parents feel uncomfortable about the fact that teachers talk about death in the classroom? From my experience, and certainly by the comments I've received by most of my teachers, no. Parents are not uncomfortable about that subject. If anything, a lot of them are very relieved by the mere fact that it's discussed in the classroom and in a setting that children may not be experiencing at that moment any kind of loss. So no, parents are very open to it. And more importantly, because of the fact that there are these information sheets that are provided to the parents, as well as for Zippy's friends and Passport Skills for Friends, Passport Skills for Life, parents are aware ahead of time. So they're not surprised by the fact that these children, their children will be talking about these sensitive issues. So in essence, those are the types of questions I got. If you have any other ones, please feel free to write to me or to call me. I'll be more than happy to give you additional information. And I also have a couple of samples that I could provide you that you could share with your colleagues. Well, thanks again for being present at this introduction of Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills for Life. And I hope to hear from you soon. Bye for now. So as an overview of the results for Passport, the teachers and the children and the parents enjoyed the program. It was easy to implement in the classroom. We've noticed in our results that it's best suited for grade 4 and grade 5 children because we found in grade 3 there were some of the concepts that were a little more difficult and more challenging for children to understand. And with grade 6, it was more like they found it maybe a little too babyish. So the overall program sat better with the grade 4 and grade 5. That it did increase coping skills with children. Their recognition of emotion was something also that was significant, and it also increased the children's classroom performance. Teachers reported that the program facilitated their management of the class and increased their own coping skills. So that, in a nutshell, is what we found in our overall results. And now just a quick view on implementation. I just briefly wanted to talk about some of the models that can be delivered in the classrooms. And this is what we're seeing right now. So essentially, some of the school boards have an in-house trainer who trains either teachers or in some case their school professionals to facilitate the program in the classrooms with children. In some cases, Zippy's Friends is being delivered over a 2-year period with the same cohort. Now we know that still has a significant effect with children because it was evaluated in Ireland a few years back using that model, and children did increase their coping skills as well as emotional literacy and so on, as what I was explaining to you a little earlier on. Teachers are running the program in the classroom. Some classes it's teachers, some other schools it's actually either youth counselors. We have also technical behavioral counselors that are also implementing the program. So it depends on the school, the milieu, who they want to have in the classroom to deliver the program. And we actually have in some instances where it's the nonprofit organization that are disseminating the program, that are training teachers in their community. And in some cases, the actual program is provided for free. It is lent to the teachers, and therefore the nonprofit organization at the end of the year just takes them back, but they're able to follow up, and the following year these teachers can certainly implement the program if they wish. So that, in essence, is some of the models that are out there, but keep in mind that there's a great deal of flexibility that if you're interested in this program, just let me know and we can discuss some of these framework that may be more suited for your environment. So essentially, the take-home message I would like to leave you with is, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. So I understand now I have a couple of questions that were sent to me while I was giving this presentation. One of them was actually, does a school need to implement both programs? Well, actually, no. Both programs are standalone. I have some schools that actually have decided to pilot with Zippy first, and then after that, see and feel and experience the program and to observe if there's some changes, and therefore, a couple of years later on, have implemented Passport. I have some schools that just went ahead and decided to actually implement Passport first, and they are going to be implementing Zippy. One particular school district in the Niagara region is going to be implementing Zippy officially in September. So there's a few models that are out there, as I was explaining to you a few seconds ago. So therefore, no, there's no need to implement both of them at the same time. They both are standalone and provide very interesting results or impacts with the children. I have another question here. It says, is there training? Well, I kind of just said it very quickly before, but yes, there is training for both programs. We will train teachers before they implement the program, and then we will also have a half-day training with them through in the middle part. Essentially, a little before they get into Module 4 and 5, we like to visit the teachers again, see how things went. Did they have any obstacles? How can we help them? And more importantly, give them necessary tools so when they're going to be dealing with Module 5, which seems to be the one that they apprehend the most, we'll give them the necessary tools to deal with it. Another question that's interesting, and this is one that I hear quite often, do parents feel uncomfortable about the fact that teachers talk about death in the classroom? From my experience, and certainly by the comments I've received by most of my teachers, no. Parents are not uncomfortable about that subject. If anything, a lot of them are very relieved by the mere fact that it's discussed in the classroom and in a setting that children may not be experiencing at that moment any kind of loss. So no, parents are very open to it. And more importantly, because of the fact that there are these information sheets that are provided to the parents, as well as for Zippy's friends and Passport Skills for Friends, Passport Skills for Life, parents are aware ahead of time. So they're not surprised by the fact that their children will be talking about these sensitive issues. So in essence, those are the types of questions I got. If you have any other ones, please feel free to write to me or to call me. I will be more than happy to give you additional information. And I also have a couple of samples that I could provide you that you could share with your colleagues. Well, thanks again for being present at this introduction of Zippy's Friends and Passport Skills for Life. And I hope to hear from you soon. Bye for now.